The morning at Fort Kingsley began like any other, routine and predictable. The crisp air outside was still heavy with the lingering scent of a recent storm. Inside the concrete walls of the military base, fluorescent lights buzzed quietly, boots echoed across the halls, and soldiers, dressed in full fatigues, prepared for another long day of drills, strategy briefings, and physical training. It was a day scheduled to be like the hundreds before it, until she came. No one noticed at first. The entrance door had been left cracked open as a supply truck backed into the loading bay. Through that narrow opening, a shape slipped inside, quiet and ghost-like. The guards at the gate had been momentarily distracted, giving her just enough of a window to sneak in unnoticed. She was a golden retriever, though her coat had dulled from grime and rain. Mud caked her legs and underside, and her tail hung low but alert. Her paws were raw, and her ribs pressed faintly against her skin, but her eyes were ablaze with purpose. They weren't the eyes of a lost dog. They were the eyes of a mother, focused, fierce, and determined. Behind her came a soft shuffle. 7 tiny, trembling puppies followed, barely old enough to walk steadily. They huddled close to her legs, trying to keep up. Every few steps, one would stumble, and she'd pause until they caught up. The mother never once looked away from them, not even as dozens of uniformed soldiers began to take notice. A hush fell over the hallway. "What in God's name?" whispered Private Ramirez, his voice laced with disbelief. The golden retriever stopped dead in the middle of the barracks hallway. She stood tall, almost regal, despite the mud on her coat. Her pups circled around her, collapsing one by one in exhaustion. Her eyes scanned the faces in the room, dozens of soldiers now staring in stunned silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then Sergeant Ray Torres stepped forward. He was a man not easily shaken. 3 tours overseas, a Purple Heart, and a reputation for being unbreakable. But something about that dog, a creature worn from battle in her own right, hit him hard in the chest. He knelt down slowly. "Easy now," he murmured. The dog didn't growl. She didn't bark. She just looked at him, eyes filled with exhaustion, but also something more: trust. She allowed him to come close. Behind him, soldiers sprang into quiet action. Someone ran to get towels. Another brought a bowl of water. A female medic named Corporal Dean fetched a blanket and a space heater. Within minutes, a small sanctuary had been formed right there in the hallway. The pups were lifted gently, wrapped in warm cloth, and laid down in a makeshift nest. The mother, still muddy, laid herself down only when every one of her babies was safe. They named her Hope. In the days that followed, soldiers at Fort Kingsley grew increasingly curious about her. Where had she come from? Who did she belong to? The base vets scanned her. No microchip. Flyers were distributed in the nearest towns. Calls were made to shelters and animal control offices in surrounding counties. Nothing. But what was clear, painfully clear, was that she had traveled a great distance. The vet estimated the puppies were no more than 3 weeks old, far too young to make a journey on their own. Whatever ordeal Hope had faced, she'd done it with 7 newborns by her side. She had crossed rain-soaked fields, highways, maybe even woods, all to find shelter. And somehow, she had chosen this place, a fortress of discipline and weapons and steel-hearted men. Or perhaps she'd chosen the men inside. Hope's arrival changed something at Fort Kingsley. The soldiers, some of whom hadn't smiled in weeks, began their mornings by checking on her. Those who rarely spoke found themselves gathered in the hallway, watching the puppies tumble over one another like fuzzy grenades. Even the grumpiest of commanders cracked smiles as the pups yapped and wobbled through drills, occasionally trying to chew on boots or drag away gloves. One evening, as the sun set over the base and the American flag was lowered, Sergeant Torres stood beside Hope at the edge of the yard. "She walked through hell to get here," he said quietly to a fellow soldier. "She trusted this place. She trusted us." Torres didn't say what everyone else had begun to feel, that this dog had come to remind them of something they were beginning to forget: loyalty, bravery, unrelenting love. Hope had been a soldier in her own right. She had endured the elements, survived hunger, fought fear, all to protect her family. And when she found herself alone in the world, she didn't run away from power or uniforms or guns. She ran to them. She believed in the protectors. As the puppies grew, decisions had to be made. Torres made the first one. "I'm keeping her," he said simply. "She found us. We're her unit now." One by one, the puppies were adopted by a sniper who barely spoke, a cook who cried when he held his pup for the first time, a rookie who hadn't seen his own family in months. They didn't just gain dogs, they gained reminders. Every muddy paw print on the floor was a lesson in resilience. Every wagging tail a reminder of the innocent lives they'd sworn to defend. Hope was given a collar with custom tags that read SGT, Hope, Unit Guardian, Fort Kingsley. She wasn't just a dog anymore. She was one of them. Word of Hope's arrival eventually spread beyond the base. A local newspaper picked up the story, then a national outlet. Soon, news cameras arrived, and stories were told of the dog who marched her puppies into a military base, seeking shelter and safety. But inside Fort Kingsley, none of that mattered. Hope wasn't a story to them. She was family. Every morning, she walked the perimeter with Torres. Every night, she curled beside his bunk. And sometimes, when drills got too intense or when memories from deployment became too heavy, a soldier would walk down the hall, sit quietly beside her, and breathe, finding peace in the soft warmth of her fur and the gentle thump of her tail. No one ever found out where Hope came from. And maybe that was okay, because what mattered wasn't where her journey started, but where it ended. Among warriors, among guardians, among those who understood what it meant to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. And in that sacred bond between soldier and dog, between pain and hope, they all found healing. They thought she came looking for safety. But the truth was, she brought it with her. Years later, a small bronze statue was erected just outside the main barracks at Fort Kingsley. It depicted a golden retriever standing tall, her head held high, surrounded by playful pups. Beneath it, a plaque read, "In honor of Sergeant Hope, who taught us strength through kindness." New recruits are told her story during orientation, not as part of military history, but as a lesson in humanity, resilience, and unconditional love. Her legacy lives on, not in medals or missions, but in every soft glance, every gentle hand, every soldier who remembers what it means to protect not just borders, but hearts. To this day, whenever storms roll over Fort Kingsley and thunder rattles the steel-frame buildings, some swear they still hear the faint tapping of tiny paws echoing through the halls. As if hope is still there, watching, guarding, loving, reminding them all that sometimes the bravest soldier isn't the one who carries a weapon, but the one who carries on, no matter the weight, for the ones they love. Many of the pups grew up to follow in their mother's paw prints, becoming therapy dogs, search and rescue companions, and even emotional support partners for veterans suffering from PTSD. One of them, named Valor, stayed at the base and became a beloved figure, visiting recovering soldiers and sitting beside them during long nights. It was as if he carried a piece of his mother's spirit, calm, steady, and full of silent understanding. Soldiers often said that just being near him brought peace, like a warm memory of home in a place so far from it. As the seasons passed and the faces at Fort Kingsley changed, Hope's story endured. A children's book was written about her journey, shared with military families across the country. It taught kids about bravery that doesn't bark, about kindness in muddy paw prints, and about the quiet courage of a mother who refused to give up. And somewhere, in every heart that read it, the golden retriever who once stood in a puddle with her puppies became more than just a dog. She became a symbol of what it means to love beyond fear and give even when you have nothing left.